My guest today is Sebastian Eilert. Sebastian is an award-winning lead certified architect from South Florida. Born in Hamburg, Germany, he is featured among the 30 most influential architects in sustainable design worldwide. He's recognized as one of the best residential architects and designers in Miami. And he also won the Best Architectural Firm Award in 2023 and 2024. So welcome to the show, Sebastian, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you to be here, Tom. Thank you for the introduction. Looking forward
Great,
to our
great.
conversation.
So I see you're sitting in front of one of your beautiful designs already that I've seen on the website. So let me tell you, tsunami, right? Miami so far hasn't had really anything crazy, but are you thinking about protecting your homes against the biggest wind that can ever happen or the biggest wave that would ever come?
Absolutely. So we've been lucky, like you said, the last couple of years have been good. So hopefully this season that's coming up next year will be the same. But Miami is a ground zero. So as in terms of sea level rise, hurricane impact, and just water issues in general, you mentioned tsunami, so storm surge actually is a huge issue coming up too. It is a huge concern. I've actually been practicing this on my projects for years. That's actually how some of the awards that you mentioned and the recognition is coming about because I've been doing as much of that as possible over the years. And yes, it's a very much present concern for every project we do here. And it's not just about durability, but it's really how you address the changing climate, unfortunately. Um, so that's something that really has to be part of every project. So the building codes are kind of trying to keep up. Florida has its own code, so we don't follow the international code. We follow the Florida building code, which is updated every 3 years. And it's Miami-Dade specifically. So where we actually have an even more stringent code. So our current criteria is 175 mile per hour impact winds. That's primarily wind, though. That's not that tsunami, but it kind of goes in line with water-related threats. And yeah, personally with my firm, so we really focus on sustainability initially, and we're kind of looking at it a little bit more broadly and actually calling it future proofing to anticipate events like you just mentioned with a tsunami. So yeah, it's a very, very important part, both for my own home and for every project we do.
So you're talking about that Miami's at zero. So what does that actually mean for sea level? I mean, does that mean you have like there's like 6 inches of a foot? Because I know Holland is below sea level. I mean, and we're going to get to where you're from. I think you guys are a little bit higher than us, but so Miami is where? How high above
Miami,
sea level?
actually, interesting you ask. I'm actually now a scientist as well, in addition to an architect. I actually just finished my master in environmental studies, and that was my topic. So technically, the elevation of Miami in relation to sea level rise, the average elevation is about 6 feet. So the highest point that we have around is like 13, 14 feet. There's like a nice coral ridge, those are nice homes. But the average is about six. Miami Beach, which is obviously a huge popular area, especially for residential. A lot of those are around 5, 6 feet, so they're really low. So it's not underwater like the Netherlands, but it is considered a global ground zero. So Bangladesh is another region that has trouble, but we're in the US. So Miami is it to study. And flooding is a huge issue, not just during storm events, but in general because of that. And if you project like a sea level rise of 3, 4 feet, about 40% of Miami-Dade County will be underwater. So you have that waterfront property, but you can't get to your house anymore. So it's a huge concern.
So how much has that changed over the last, say, like, so right now you say highest average is six, highest is 13, average is six. What was it since you've been studying that? What was it like maybe 10 years ago? Has it changed a lot?
So
And is it,
down
and
here,
is it,
not
and is
so
it getting
much.
less and less or more and more?
It not so much because most of Miami-Dade here is on a coral ridge, so the soil actually is very stable, which when it comes to construction and foundation work, that generally works in its favor. However, especially waterfront or water edge properties, erosion is a concern. So you do have issues there, and you do have to install seawalls and treat the soil and the grade. Otherwise, there's a project I'm wrapping up right now. Well, the contractor is wrapping it up, but the design is done. It's a great project, and it's really addressing a lot of those concerns. It's an understory design, which means the Florida Keys is very typical for that. I think in the Carolinas and others, you also find like coastal homes that are kind of raised off the ground. But in this case, you actually have an understory where you can have a garage access to your living spaces and a little bit of storage. And so this particular site was at 5 feet and a few inches. My client actually owns the property next to the new house that we're building,
Hmm.
and we had to fill the grade up by over a foot and a half by code to start our new grade. So we had to install retaining walls in addition to a new seawall in the front. And
Right.
then you're also sloping up from the street. So the entire property, if you look at the rest of the neighbors around it, is higher because exactly what you say. So the code is trying to keep up with that a little bit, but the reality is it is affecting properties the way that you're building here right now.
Wow. I tell you, something to be concerned about, right?
Now you have to plan for the future, and this is a huge issue that's coming in. You had mentioned that tsunami initially, right? So
Yeah.
if you think hurricane-wise, the building code is pretty good, right? Miami-Dade specifically, if you want to talk about that, the whole notice of acceptance NOA testing protocol, it's kind of unique to this county, not even to the state, just to Miami-Dade. And it's doing a pretty good job when it comes to wind impact, right? So the damage to the structures is really not there. And yes, we've been lucky over the years. We really
Right.
haven't had a major direct hit in quite some time, thank goodness. But what you want to do with that is there you go. Losing my train of thought. Sorry about that.
It's all right. No
So
worries. It's all good.
need to come back. The tsunami, right? So there was the last storm that hit this season, Florida was coming through Tampa. And if you recall the numbers, I
Right.
think the storm surge was around 12, 14 feet.
Yes.
So if you're looking at 6 feet up, and then this particular house, the living floor is about 16 feet, so they would have been clear. But that is not the normal way that you build. Most houses are built closer to the ground,
Yep.
8, maybe 9 feet. If you're thinking ahead, like for example, the house I did behind, we raised that another foot, so you're 10 feet. But if you have a 12, 14-foot storm surge, you're still going to
You're in
get flooded,
trouble.
and quite substantially. So that's something that is really not going away, and it's going to get worse. And you really have to plan for that in the project as you go along the way.
Well, that's what took out North Florida and
Yeah.
Carolinas was the storm surge. I have a an owner's rep that lives in St. Petersburg, and
Oh,
it was it wasn't even the wind; it was the water that just came through, took everything, and brought everything out and destroyed with salt water. I had a friend who just moved to North Florida just 3 weeks before the hurricanes. He was
oh well,
freaked out. He was
that
like, "Why did
timing.
I move?" But
Hopefully
so
that.
you're sitting in front of a beautiful house, and I noticed that the less the wind can grab things is the better. And I see that you kind of build sort of a wrap tight, um, nothing flying off the house sort of build, and that's sort of durability, right? Is that's where it comes from?
Very much, and thank you for seeing that. Yes, that is very much my preferred method. Again, the building code kind of regulates a lot, but if you have a lot of overhang details, so forth, you have to treat them additionally. So to me, that is not an intelligent design choice. So I really like a little bit more of the purity there. Actually got that. I know in the pre-conversation we had, you kind of asked about mentorship and kind of inspiration. So in South Florida, there's actually a line of thought from the 60s that was called the Sarasota School of Design. It wasn't an actual school, it was more like a school of thought thing. Like Paul Rudolph, Alfred Browning Parker are some of the architects that
Yep.
are really like instrumental in that idea. And they just came up with a couple of considerations as like design principles. And one of those was to have a purity of design from a structural component so that a layperson could walk up to a house and understands how a house is built, right? If you see a column and you see a beam on top of it and you see those connections, whether you know the technical aspect, like no, like the way that we do, or you're just experiencing it, anybody can understand that that beam is held up by that column.
Right.
Versus you have a box and you have all these details and all these elements, like it even for a person who doesn't do it, it's pretty confusing. And then when you talk about durability, so this project behind me is the Moorings residence in a neighborhood called Coconut Grove here in Miami, and it remains one of my favorite projects, if
Really?
I may. allowed
Doesn't
way to
doesn't
talk about.
doesn't look as big as some of the houses in Coconut Grove because I just went through a bidding process on 3821 Crawford with a
Beautiful
client
area.
from Georgia.
Hmm.
Uh, Big house, 8,000 square feet and whatnot. But he thinks he can GC it himself. So we'll probably be called back on that. But
Oh, you're gonna have some nice conversations. No, but you
yeah,
hit it on the head. As a matter of fact, this client, this specific neighborhood, it's kind of a gated community, but you can have access. But in any case, this is by far the smallest house in that little neighborhood.
oh
And
great,
while we were designing and building it, throughout, the neighbors and other developers came up and kept encouraging my client to literally double the size. This house is 3,300 square feet,
it's a good
and
size.
pretty much everything around is 6,000 and up.
Yep.
The lot would hold it, but he was like, "Nah, I don't want it." And it's part of the durability. So he moved. He sold a very large estate in the Bahamas in Eleuthera, and he just wanted to be on land side as he was aging. So aging in place and durability were huge consideration for this particular project. So one of the components, besides the design that you see outside, right, is this relatively clean line, simple, a lot of glazing. You see some of that. Oh, I forgot the way you see some of that. That's actually the
Yeah.
front
Oh,
door. So
yep.
it is actually like a storefront system to maximize that glazing. But on the inside, there's not a single piece of drywall in the entire project.
Beautiful.
Zero. There's almost no
Nothing,
wood.
nothing, nothing can absorb moisture or anything.
No,
So it's more like it's monolithic.
it is. So the interior walls were built out of 4-inch concrete block and then stucco. The ceiling, we used a fiberglass board instead of
Yeah.
gypsum.
Like a
And
Denza
then the
glass.
cabin. It's a fiberglass. I've used it on exterior on like hospitality type
Yep.
projects.
Yep.
It's a good like, and you can use it in the kitchen and so forth because it doesn't absorb any moisture and so forth. Great product. But in this case, the decision was again like no maintenance, no moisture, no humidity, no mold, none of those issues. And even the kitchen cabinets and the vanities are poured concrete and stainless steel. So
Beautiful.
there's no wood inside the house. It's
Beautiful.
only a little bit of furniture. So durability was really key. Nice open spaces. If you do, you can see actually this is one of my higher end clients that they allowed me to publish the house. Not everybody wants that, so I'm sure you
Yeah.
run into that
Oh,
too.
yeah. Yeah. You always show your best work.
You show your best work, but some clients prefer to keep theirs private. So, you have to
Yeah.
respect that,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But if you see the interiors too, it's very open. And I had people ask me over the years as they look at that, it's like, so was this done just like as a picture, or is this the actual, like, is this how he's living? I know that's how he's living. There's hardly any furniture, very, very sparse.
Yeah.
But he really wanted it that way to again to keep that durability. It's like I don't want to fix things in the next 40, 50 years. I don't care. I want it easy to maintain and I want it to stay around. So
So
very nice project.
terrazzo floors or
Polished
concrete,
concrete. Polished
polished
concrete.
concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
All right.
trying that terrazzo. It's for our climate, it's such a beautiful floor because it naturally retains coolness. So
Yeah.
the air conditioning is paramount. We don't need really heating. So that floor kind of helps to keep the house cool longer. Polished
Yeah.
concrete does a good job too, but terrazzo, there's something about the particles that just seem to do this a little bit better. And obviously, if
Yeah.
anything spills with terrazzo, it's a solid pour. You just mop it up and you're good to go.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love everything about it. So, Germany.
Yes,
Were you born in Germany?
I was born in Germany. Yeah. So how lucky is it on this side?
I can tell you were born in Germany, And so tell me a little bit about your life back in Germany and
Sure.
how old you were and when you got here and some fun things because I love Europe as well because I went to Holland a lot. So Germany was only one language over. It's like going from New York to Staten Island, but they spoke a whole different language and my cousins love to bring me there. But
Uh,
go ahead, tell me about it.
no, very much. It's actually it's the simple answer is the university. So I did end up coming here to study, but I did grow up in Germany, went to school there. During my school, I was very focused on art and math. So those were kind of my configurations, and so relatively early on, I figured that architecture would probably be a good fit for me. Looked into other things like graphic design or so forth, but I really honed in on architecture relatively early. One of the things I did before starting university, I actually worked as a construction carpenter for a year.
Right.
that was kind of like a choice because in Germany specifically, the universities do require you to have a trade skill for a semester.
Like an
So I was kind of
apprenticeship. That's good.
yeah. So yeah, that you understand physically. Some require. I don't know if they still do it, but back in the day, in a few years. So that was definitely the case, and like some do require an in-office internship, but most of them require a trade internship. And
Right.
I love the outdoors. I always love wood. I circle back to that in terms of going back to Germany and why we're actually relocating. But it really kind of allowed me to understand things better. And then ultimately, I almost ended up in your neighborhood. So
Really?
yeah, it was really funny. I applied to there weren't that many schools that were accredited at the time when I came, and I did get accepted to the University of Hawaii. Um, University. Uh, Let me pick up. Oh, I can't think of the name. Oh, drawing a blank is part of getting old. What's the Central University in New York? Right off of Washington Square. It
Oh,
is,
NYU.
no, not NYU, the other one with the C. Cornell? No, it's not Cornell. Is it
Oh
Cornell?
man, I
Could be
can't
Cornell.
remember.
All right. Any case, I was accepted to three universities. The name I can't remember, and I obviously did not go to in New York, University of Hawaii and University of Miami. And my father was like, Hawaii is not going to happen. You know, you're studying architecture, you're not studying surfing. So I get that.
Right.
And then between New York and Miami, it was really just chance. And so I did end up here. It was different. I kept working the summers actually in Germany because I had that construction relation there. So I actually spent my summers there, just working and kind of staying home. Eventually, though, once graduating, pretty clearly set my path to get my license. I know I was the first in my semester to get my architectural license, and then relatively quickly started my own company. So it did take a few years. You have to build up a little bit of reputation, but I started my firm in 2006, so it's been a few years. Some challenges in there. Obviously, my I went all in at the end of 2006, so I had a good year, and
Wow.
then things were very, very challenging. As you remember, 2008 was not a good year for anybody in the
Yes.
construction industry.
It was
But
amazing. And
yeah,
then we hit that turn down, and that was 2009, right?
2009, 8 and 9 was a killer. So, but it actually, because it was still very early on in setting up my company, it taught me a very valuable lesson in terms of how to manage and run a company. And in a way, obviously at the time, it was not pleasant at all, but it really helped me, I think, to sustain the company as well, not just taking sustainability to the projects, but also into my firm. So that an involuntary, unfortunate event, but it kind of made sense. And because I started my own company, I never really went back fully to Germany. I still have family there, so obviously I do travel back. But once you committed, I think it was kind of
Yeah.
the choice to stay here. Obviously, I started my family and I kind of build the rest of the portfolio along with it, but that's kind of how it stayed here. But I very much do miss a lot of elements from Germany, especially the older you get. It's like, for example, in Miami, you literally have to drive everywhere. I mean, there's very few neighborhoods where you can, once you're there, you can kind of be okay.
Yeah.
Probably like a portion of Miami Beach, like the South Beach area.
Yeah.
If you live there, you can probably get just about everything done either on a scooter or by foot, but it's
Exactly.
an absolute exception, you know. And that's something that I really miss every time I go home. And then when you come back to the US, it's like over there, you don't need a car. It's like even if you have something, if you have too much to carry, you can quickly, easily grab a cab or even public transport. But like that doesn't even it exists in Miami, but it's really not functional. And those are some of the elements that very much are missed between between Miami and Germany, and uh, leading towards that. Yeah, but we're actually expanding and taking our primary location actually to your neighborhood. I mean, that's how our conversation started.
Oh, so repeat that again.
I was saying that part of the reason we're actually transitioning next year our primary location out of South Florida into upstate New York.
Oh, so you're taking your business from out of Miami and
Well, it's not needed here.
your primary house
Correct.
and moving up to
To actually to upstate New York and the southeast corner of the Adirondacks.
have a house in Brentingham,
Okay.
Forge,
I have to look that one up.
right near Lowville, Boonville area. And I know
Yeah.
Fort Drum, and I know that whole area. So where is your property located?
It's really close to Fort Drum, actually. Fort Drum
Yeah,
is like the next one. There's like between Fort Drum and Carthage.
yeah, yeah.
It's like
Beautiful.
a just a beautiful area, private pond. So got like 300 plus feet of a pond, waterfront.
Wow.
So
What drove you and what made you and why from the beautiful palm trees I see there and you're going to go to pine trees, not it still begins with a P, but you're going to go to pine trees, not palm trees, and you're going to go from degrees to above to below zero. So what made you do that?
I think part of the answer lies in my German heritage. It's definitely the seasons or lack of seasons here are definitely missed. That's definitely part of the answer. I am fortunate in that my wife is Latina, but she is one of the few ones that actually is not keen on the heat. So she's actually very much encouraging it. As a matter of fact, it was partly her idea. And the answer goes a little bit beyond that. So from let me go back to the personal, but on the business side. So a few years ago, she really leaned into the interior design portion of the business.
Right.
That has worked out very, very well for us here as a husband-wife team doing architecture and
Yeah.
interior together. And also, usually me more involved in the beginning in residential, as you know. But then the interior design really on the doing the construction side is a lot more involved and helpful to move the project forward in a very holistic way. So with that, and the fact that we travel quite a bit, so we looked into California, but California is, while it's a fantastic area, the climate is actually, it's mild. We're looking at the like the Pebble Beach, Pacific
Yeah.
Grove,
Yeah.
Monterey area,
Yep.
beautiful area, but um, like I said, this is our primary location. So we continue to have a presence here and projects here in South Florida, and it's just too far. That's not a
Yeah.
realistic travel to be on the project and like stay here for a few weeks. It's just not a proper back and forth. So we focused on New England, and Southern Maine, upstate New York, portions of Vermont. I really uh, personally always love the areas, and it's also for the kind of projects that we work. It's a really beautiful market. Well, a lot of secondary homes. So the primary market is secondary homes. Sounds a
Yeah.
little funny, but again, you understand the area already better. So the research really showed that. So I am licensed like throughout New England now. So I got the entire area covered. So I got New York,
Beautiful.
Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, Vermont. So that's the area where we focus in, and then we really like the outdoors. We really like personally wherever we travel we do try to be active, and it's something that in South Florida or in Florida for that matter, you really can't do. We have two seasons here, which is hot and hotter.
Yeah.
Right now, it's nice. Right? Like this December, January are probably the two best months you have, and it's right now we're questioning the decision a little bit because these are the days when you're like it's perfect. You can open the windows, you can turn off your air
Yeah.
conditioning, and it's just amazing. But this is not the norm. The majority of the year is hot and humid. Must have air conditioning. You must drive everywhere, and so to be able to just take a 10-20 minute drive and be in the Adirondack National Park and go for a hike, it's
Absolutely.
impossible to do here. And that's as you know, as we're getting up in age, I'm really looking for that balance, more of a quality life rather than too much work.
Yeah.
And again, we're fortunate that with the kind of work we do, we have a very strong focus, but you really need and can have that balance. It's about quality and not about quantity anymore.
Quality of life for sure. I am, like I said, I am only an hour outside the city. I'm 3.5 hours from the Adirondacks, and
Yeah.
and I'm 20 minutes from the airport and a 2.5 hour flight to Miami. So,
Yep.
same thing. A good balance. A good balance. So you're gonna keep doing work in Miami because you have
Oh,
to,
absolutely, yes. Yeah, we
and
have.
you're gonna expand up
we-
the Adirondacks because it's moving. It's moving up this way. So,
Yes, I think so.
um,
Yep. Because in a way, because of the experience we have here with hurricane impacts and climate change design, I think that is something that we have found very much an interest with our clients over the years, and a lot of them already have two homes. Well, I haven't done work there, but like multiple clients of mine have homes on like the Cape Martha's Vineyard up there. I don't have any in the Hamptons, but I do have another one against Southern Maine. So we kind of listen to our clients that are retired and have a home here, and like, where's your other home? So,
Right.
and it's really in that New England area. And like I said, it's an easy flight down. If you have to do anything, I have my relationships here with my engineers, my contractors, my vendor suppliers, and so forth.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, and you have to be at a project at certain times, but there's a lot of stretches where you are more required to be on the project rather than the architect or interior
Yeah.
designer.
Yeah.
We're,
Well,
we're,
me
we're
as the
close.
owner, I have a lot of delegates below me, so that have been through the
Yes,
Dutchman School of Ballet. So, and I'm very good at meeting new people and putting things together. But you mentioned New England, but you mentioned Fort Drum. I mean, Fort Drum is a little ways from New England.
true. That's hence we chose New York because I did have a project up there already that hopefully will proceed besides our own home. So yeah, our airport is actually going to be Syracuse, and it's really to be closer to nature and a little bit away from the coast. But yeah, we looked into southern Maine and upstate New York, and upstate New York won. But it's
Yes.
just like Miami, it's a 45-minute flight or
Yep.
an hour, and
Yep.
you really it's easy to get around and to have projects.
Yeah, you're what, about an hour away from the Syracuse airport if you had to fly,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
unless you make friends with someone at Fort Drum and they can fly you out of Fort Drum. That's it's an amazing place, some place there.
Absolutely.
So great. So you come from Germany in 2006, and you're in Miami, and now you're going up to Adirondacks. It sounds very exciting what you're doing, and I'm very happy that you're
Thank
that
you.
you're that you're here on the show. And with that, we're going to take a small break. Be back shortly. Welcome back to the Blueprint with Tom. I have my guest, Sebastian Eilert from Germany, architect from Miami, Florida. And we're talking about a lot of fun stuff from Miami all the way to the Adirondacks. You can imagine traveling in a car, how long that would take, right? So, Sebastian, where can people find you? Where's the best place to find Sebastian?
So the easiest one, actually, if you see my name, Sebastian Eilert, that is the company website. Sebastian Eilert Architecture is the official name of it, but the website is sebastianeilert.com, Eilert. For some reason in the US, they always try to put a B in there. It is not
Yeah.
Eilert, it is Eilert. So it was an interesting choice early on, since we are a boutique firm. I did choose to go with my name rather than with something else. And I have to say, over the years, there were times when I've regretted it a little bit because it's my name. And if I introduce myself or share something, it's like I'm Sebastian Eilert of Sebastian Eilert Architecture. My email is Sebastian at sebastianeilert.com. The website is sebastianeilert.com. So it's a lot of my name, and it comes across a little egocentric, but I'm actually a much more of a team focused individual.
Well, I don't feel bad for you because my name is Thomas van de Veerdonk and I made it Dutchman Contracting. So when it's T van de Veerdonk at DutchmanContracting.com, whoa, that's a mouthful too. So yeah, no, you got a great name. Great, rolls right off the tongue. It's great.
Thank you.
So clients, so where are they coming from, and how do you get them? And we'll get a little deeper into a couple other questions. But word of mouth? Do you do a lot of shows?
Honestly, over the years, the primary and above all is word of mouth, and I have been tracking that over the years. There were a couple of years specifically when we're really paying very close attention to it, kind of in the midsection. As I mentioned, I started the company in 2006, so just before the Great Recession crash. So I had to very, very carefully think about how to create a pipeline for it. And as a boutique firm, that remains a challenge, right? But the primary source, hands down, is word of mouth and past client referrals.
Yep.
I guess I have been doing good work over the years, so we have a fair amount of repeat clients, which is obviously longevity part. Within our industry, having a repeat client, we're not car salespeople, so it's not like you're buying a car every couple of years.
Right.
Designing a home or major renovation addition projects do take a couple of years in between. So I have one client, I did their business and three of their houses. So I think they like my work. So
Yeah.
very, very fond of that.
Well, who
And
wouldn't? You're sitting
that's a
in
big
front of the
part.
beautiful place right now. So,
Thank you. Yes. So this another word of mouth referral, right behind me. I have done other things. I've been fortunate that I've been published a little bit. I got like two books that feature some of my projects, and including the one behind me. So those are out there. They help. I don't know if it's the primary one, but I'm sure it does help. I do like the website House. Actually, if you see, that's probably other than my own website where you can find most of my projects over the years. So they got some pro LinkedIn's that seem nice, but it's again it's more like verification of who we are, right? When somebody hears about you, they say, okay, this is an architect I've worked with, check him out. Then the digital world becomes more of a legitimizing of who I am, what I've done, and how I've been around. I do have a blog, which is called Village Greenman. Sorry, Village Greenman is the official title. It is Miami Green Homes.
great.
And it's not just about Miami, it's really about green homes. It's when we first started out, sustainability and green was really the terminology. At this point, we've kind of moved, I think, past that. I'm personally a huge fan of the German word Nachhaltigkeit, which was very much involved in conversations behind it, because Nachhaltigkeit incorporates not just sustainable ideas, but also the ideas of durability and longevity. So it's a lot more than that. And I do have that in some of the topics as well. And as we're growing with threats of environmental types, like you mentioned initially, the tsunami, the storm surges, and so forth,
Right.
future proofing is really more of a line of thought, which means the building, but it also means the flow of the building. So aging in place, being able to use your structure as you're planning and going into the future are really important. And so those kind of conversations and topics do help to attract clients, and some of them may find us that way as well. But predominantly, unfortunately, it is word of mouth. But as a boutique firm, I think that's a good component, and it kind of speaks to the kind of work that we do.
Absolutely. So you meet a husband and wife team, husband team, wife team, whatever team you meet, and you set them down in your office and you have all these models and right, and you take and bring them in there and you start designing for them. How do you start with them? Like how do you know not to break their budget? Do your projects go out to bid, or do you have a select contractors you work with to try to bring them in early so you could do some value engineering? That way you don't get into the you don't get into the value engineering later on. So you design the whole house, and then later on you're looking back and we gotta take this out. This is too much. How do you manage that?
It's a big challenge. So the first part, interesting enough, actually, we very, very seldom have client come to the office. By the absolute majority, we actually go meet the client at the current location. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, I think it tones down the energy dynamics. As I mentioned, I'm not that selfish kind of architect that say, okay, this is my design, take it or leave it. I
Yeah.
very much believe in that team approach, and that goes into the contracting question that you posed as well. But it right away from the beginning, by being in their initial environment, they feel very much like they're in control. It's like they're not a strange guest, and you really put them at ease right from the start. I find that very, very helpful. Plus, it really works in my advantage because it gives me an idea of how the clients are living, like what elements are important to them.
Right.
Some clients are very good, and we always have a project start list, like a checklist that we provide, some documentation we need, but it also requires the homework from the client to give us some reference images, things that they like, things that they've seen. If they've been to a hotel traveling and they like a feature, it's like, oh my God, I love this. That is really good. But having been in their home, you kind of get a feel for how they may work, and they will tell you, what, this is one thing that I absolutely must have and love, and we're building a new house, so we want to really knock this thing down and build something bigger because this part doesn't really work.
Right.
I can tell
Right.
you, I had one client who did not fall into that, and he specifically did it because he did not want me to do any of that. He's like, you will not come to my project. We're great friends, so it wasn't an adversity statement, but he's like, I don't want you to see how I'm living. I want you to really have a very clean and fresh slate. So I was like, okay. So in that case, yeah,
He wanted you to use your imagination.
without anything, like he didn't want me to have any reference to what he has now, because it's just that to listen to that kind of the general components and then just you come up with it. I don't want you to like build of my life, like just you do it on your own based on the whole thing. Super happy. As a matter of fact, that was one of those changes. Doing the construction, they added a family member. So we had to add another bedroom and bathroom
Uh-oh.
to the project along the way. So it went
Surprise, surprise.
Oh, yeah, went from a 5.5 to a 6.6. Nice large house. But it's very important to really have the client buy in. And by the same token, also over the years, I had one client who didn't want to be involved. Like they said they were, and usually that's something that I or my wife as well, we usually pitch that we really are that team approach. And like you said, that husband and wife team on our end. You have your architect, your interior designer. We have that pool of contractors that we work with, and we do like to bring them in early on. Doesn't always work, but we do like it, and it really creates that team atmosphere so they feel comfortable along the way,
Right.
coming up even with changes, and it happens. It's
Yeah.
design construction. You come across something, and you just like I really want to incorporate that into your project now too. So, yeah, we'll make it work. I think both of us are. That's how you earn your good reputation. But it is important to get them involved. The other question you asked, and if you want to direct differently, by all means, but the other question you asked was about contracting and budgets. Very difficult, especially in the time that we're in. So Miami over the last 5 years has really caught up on its construction cost. So we used to have a certain kind of historic reference that you could rely on. In the last 4 or 5 years, that really wasn't the case. And it's like as an example, like a rough square foot cost for a new home, good level, maybe if you want to go super high, you can double that. But this is a good house, solidly built, incorporating a lot of those sustainable and future-proof features. I could have done that for like 250, 300 a foot is a general number.
Yep.
That those days are gone, and you're now looking at 450. And a lot of times these conversations have early on happened with the client. We've been fortunate that very few are very hard on a budget. The project and its functionality tend to prioritize the budget, but you have those as well. And in that case, you must say, okay, the things you want, you can only really do two-thirds with the budget that you have. If you want to push it, go for it. But it's difficult to do that.
Right.
Personally, I like to design for the wish list. We work completely in 3D, so we do create a virtual model. Whether new, it's easy, but even for major renovations, we scan the existing house and then build the model out from that. So some clients that are not so good about internally visualizing, it's really easy for them to kind of go through on the residential market
Right.
and design it. Look, design it, put it in before we proceed to engineering. Let's get an estimate. So we'll do that. They get all the pieces they want. They can see it. They love the design. Then we have that's the latest point. I'd like to get a contractor involved in the project so that they can take around 2 3 weeks to put some actual numbers together,
Right.
or at least an actual good budget. And when it comes back, it's like, look, this is kind of the number. By the time it's engineered, maybe it's within 10% of that number. So are you comfortable with that number, or do you want to alter things before we proceed? So
Right.
that's something I do frequently, and it has served well over the years to give the clients the best project that they want while understanding the cost of things.
Do they still want to see multiple bids? Because I know that, bidding a type of projects you do are one-off. So, I mean, it's hard to, find people. That's my next question. The reason why we are moving into Miami, we have been in Miami under Dutchman Custom Builders. We have another name, is because we were trying to bring that New York energy
Yep.
down to Miami, and I wanted to get into warmer temperature.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we're looking to move to something more like with varying seasons and cooler. And most people I talk to is like, no, we're getting out of here. We're going south. Um, the principally the answer is yes. It is not an easy sale. However, the way I've been able to adjust that, and it doesn't always work, but it works predominantly, is to have the conversations with the contractors early on, not about money, but about the firm and the person.
Right.
So instead of bidding the set and let's just looking at the number of it, pretty much all the contractors I work with are doing cost plus, so it's an open book.
Yeah.
So it's really just a matter of, what is your percentage? What is the cost on top of everything else that the contractor charges? And are you feeling good with the contractor?
Yep.
So do the interviews early on, doing the design phase, and then pick one, you know, and that has worked out pretty good. Not always, but most of the projects are now leaning in that direction, and I think it's a great part because the GC is staked in the project early on, so you don't have to worry about like you may or may not get it. You don't have to have a bid that takes a lot of time as a contractor. I know it. Like you're not just coming up with these numbers. You have to
Yep.
coordinate with your shell guy, your electrician, your plumber, your
Yep.
finishes, and you have to pull these together. And then going against two, three firms, the probability at that point you have spent a lot of time and may or may not get the project. It's not a good scenario, and clients are beginning to see that. What helped is after COVID, 2021 specifically, almost nobody would bid anyway. So the contractors were like, there's so much fluctuation in fees. Even if I bid now, I cannot guarantee that number for more than 30 days. That's it.
Yep.
And that actually helped make the argument to focus on the firm and the person and not on the money.
Yep. That's great. We love it. I love it that way because now all you're doing is negotiating general conditions and fee and insurance. And now you pick the person who you want to work with. And that's what I like to do as well. That's how I like to be,
It
hired
makes
by the
for a
job.
much better project, in my opinion, because
Yep.
you're in it, we're in it. So the whole idea of you having a team that's building a project that way really comes through. And you ask about like budgets. It's like if there's a question, like for example, we're designing a house right now. This is not new. But it's a major renovation. And one of the key components is like it's like a floating stair that is hugging around a large wine cellar. Okay. It's essentially an 80 to $100,000 feature. And I've done a couple of wine cellars before, not to this scale and not residential. I've done them for a few restaurants. So
Right.
you can see those, but having the number from the contractor, not just from me, really made the client feel at ease. And it's like, is that a feature you're comfortable proceeding? You're spending
Right.
1.6 million on this renovation. Do you want 10% of that almost going to 8% going to that feature? And the answer is yes, we're good to go. So if you design it and then later on it comes and you get a bid, and now you're saying, oh my God, this is 80, $90,000, $110,000 for just the stair and the wine cellar,
Yep.
then it really takes away from the team approach.
Yep. How do you take the sprinkles and the icing away from the cake when it's already made, right? It's very hard to do, right?
Yes.
You get to see it. So how big is your team? How big is your team?
At the moment, we're three.
Three.
Um, but I did, and this also came out of COVID. So I do actually have three other cells scattered throughout the world that are people that are like an independent contracting setup.
Yeah.
We used to have a larger office with more in-house staff, but the reality is with fluctuations, it's really not necessary.
Right,
And
right, right.
most So two of those three cells pretty much directly evolved out of being employed. They just felt they had more opportunity being on their own, but they
Right.
still do a substantial and dedicated amount of work. And in one of them specifically, we have a kind of an exclusive arrangement because if we are in-house reached a certain way, he's prioritizing my project above all. And so far, that has worked out. So he's like, I call him my primary PM.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So you said you're a husband and wife team, and I actually have a architectural firm that's actually called Husband and Wife that I work for. And
Cool.
so you've been working since 2006. So she came on and you say she does all the interior design and furniture and
So yes, she was obviously part of the conversation from the beginning, but really, so it always been kind of in the background. But after COVID, that really changed to the foreground. So always been kind of part of it, but really made that more of a forefront element. There was also a legal change that kind of drove that too up to the early 2020. Florida did require licensing for interior designer, and they did away with that. So the
Well, that's
competition altered. So before, I am actually licensed interior designer as well, but the marketplace on the professional side actually
right.
became very different. So now interior decorators very comfortably call themselves interior designers. And so we really needed to move it from the background more to the foreground, that is architecture and interior design. So it just was the right time to really push that into the front. And like I said, we had projects together over the years anyway. We do independent work obviously as well, but we had projects that we already did, and the clients just really like it. They really appreciate that when they talk to Anjanice, then they know it will come back to me because inevitably we'll talk about it. They don't have to send another email or call me as well. It's just really works and flows well together.
That leads me to schedules, right? Everybody wants things, if FedEx could deliver yesterday, that's what people want, right? They want things
Of
faster and
course.
faster. And they ask Sebastian, how long do you think the project would take? And you kind of talk with the contractor, and we think it's going to take this, and that. And we all know that it takes longer. But what's nice that you work with your wife, and she's the interior designer. So most of the times you're not upsetting them because she's okay with it because she's on your same team. But
Exactly.
how are your schedules? Are your schedules pretty spot on, or are they like everything else? They move around.
They're pretty good. So
Right.
we've been pretty fortunate over the years. It comes from the that team mindset, I think, as well. Because when you do have the GC early on involved, the scheduling becomes more
Right.
realistic. So that is a side effect almost of the way that we'd like to handle our projects. Now, South Florida specifically, and again, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate, but the rainy season, hurricane season, even if there's no hurricane, but like this was a very, very wet year. Not just the hurricane season itself, which begins in June 1st and goes till the end of November, but
Right.
even the rainy season before that, you have just very much saturated soil, and that obviously impacts your schedule, right? So that is something that you have absolutely no control over. And if you have, now, I guess in New York it's going to be snow days, but here it is
Yeah.
rainy days, and that can really prolong the project. So that is something that is really the primary driver. Last year, and this now has eased off, but 22, 23, maybe the beginning of 24, we did have some delays because of just international trade.
Yeah.
There were just, I don't know if you remember, like that Suez Canal
Yeah. That
that
put a
happened.
big
That
damper on things, huh?
had really impacted. And so now instead of a 10 days, you're looking at 30, 40 days to get the refrigerator that is in transit. And then the fridges might be an easy part, but there were other materials that you had to get internationally, and just shipping and logistics just messed up timeline. Other than that, yeah, I know you know it. Everybody in construction knows, right? You have your triangle. You have fast, good, and cheap. Your
Right.
cost, your time, your duration.
You can't
And
have them all. I had a question about you. You had a house on your website that was stone. It was a historical.
yes,
I guess it was called the Grove House.
yes, that was
And
the
I have a friend that lives in Homestead, and he tells me that you dig down a couple of feet and you get to this coral rock, and then below the coral rock is water. So do you guys kind of, when you're excavating houses, do you kind of integrate some of this coral rock? Is it in Miami as well, where you're building?
It is throughout. I mentioned earlier with the predominant soil called, yeah, there's a coral ridge running along this, so we do have rather porous site, and one of like the percolation soil test is an absolute imperative component for every project. It's one of the first things that you get. The structural engineer requires it. We get to permitting, the structural reviewers require it. The house that you mentioned, the Kent residence in Abbott residence in Coconut Grove, we did save some of those, but you're also not really allowed to have basements. Basements do not exist in this
Yeah.
part of the world. It is in part because of the soil conditions that you mentioned. You get to moisture and water relatively quickly, but it's also and predominantly because of flooding issues. So the FEMA flood maps were so low that you really are not able to secure it down. You're only allowed, there's a couple of parking garages that tried it with some pumps and other ways,
Yeah.
and limited storage, but you cannot have any living space in terms of functioning part going down. It's
Too
not
risky.
realistic.
Way
You
too
don't want
risky.
to. Yeah,
Way too risky. I love the 2/2 windows and how they're lined up for the airflow and all that. It's a real. So I did a lot of historic work as a young man as well with my father and plastering. But my modern flair is where I like to do and like to work and like to be because there's no tolerance. People think it's easy, but it's very difficult with reveals and whatnot. I'd love to show you some of my one of my projects in Manhattan. It's really, 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 really minimal.
absolutely.
Love to show you that. But again, the the engineering to actually like the coral, like I'm getting back to the coral because
Yes.
it interests me that this is like below and then below that's water. How far do you have to pile down? So like this particular has a foundation. How far down is that foundation? Is it slab on grade pretty much? Like an
So
Adirondack slab on grade where it kind of
slab on grade is the predominant way that people
right,
build here. It is not really the predominant way that I built. It's a part of the clientele and the locations, but you always have to be site specific. Like I said, that soil test is the ultimate, and it will give you the answer. If you're within a close proximity to the water's edge, you pretty much have to build on piles. It really does vary from site to site, but if you want an estimate, let's say 20, 30 feet down, you probably get some bearing capacity. But sometimes you get it sooner, rarely you get it lower. But like that's about a good way. So the it makes the structure almost independent. And again, if you have a condition like that, unless you have excellent soil capacity that and away from a certain distance from the water body, it's usually 100
right,
feet. Then you go to slab on grade, but again, most of my homes are not. The other part, however, and actually, since you talked about historic preservation, which to me, I love it, and like there's some, I like it to keep my mind fresh. While for new homes, I much prefer the cleaner lines and
yeah,
the easier resonance. Like I said, not too much frills and not too many like overhangs and odd corners.
right,
But if you do renovations and additions, then you really have to work with the existing structure, and there can really be some challenges. So the lime rock that you mentioned, and we did use some of that in the Coconut Grove house, but the biggest challenge there was not the foundation. The biggest challenge were actually the windows, because that house was predominantly built out of lime rock, and then it had like Dade County pine structural members for the flooring.
right.
You really had to find a way to comply with today's code.
Yep.
So, we're in Miami-Dade County. We have a thing here which is kind of unique from the rest of the country, which is called the Miami-Dade Product Approval. And everything that is on the exterior has to go through a testing protocol to show that it complies with wind impact criteria of 175 miles per hour. Right?
You mentioned that, yes.
Yeah. When I was teaching, actually, my favorite example is kind of in your back of the woods. Um, when they did the Coney Island train station. If you're
Right,
familiar
right.
with that, it has like a wave roof that
Yes,
resemble like the water part. So at the time, they were trying to find a testing protocol to show that they can do it, that glass and the photovoltaics can is efficient and durable and will do the job. And they actually found the Miami-Dade County product approval to test it and pass it. And so it's a really strict and stringent way to comply. So it's a challenge sometimes from a design point, because as you go around trade shows and others, you see some materials, they're like, oh my God, that would be amazing. But if they don't comply with this criteria, we really can't use it. As a result, the homes are pretty durable by design. But in this historic home, finding a way to anchor the windows so that they're compliant was a real challenge. So we essentially had to we had to inject concrete into every single of the masonry opening to be able to have the windows with like 12-inch bolts anchored into that lime rock structure to make it compliant. So the foundation was less of an issue in that project, but there were still structural challenges. And that's when with older and historic homes, you have those. New homes are straightforward. Just about everything here is built out
right,
of
right,
concrete
right,
for that
right.
reason. Because you pour it, you have the piles, you have your connections. The
Exactly.
engineers know what they're doing. So, and I'm very structurally focused on my design, so I know what I'm doing too. I'm not just a design architect, but I do understand how the structures come together. So it is a key and very important part in this back of the woods.
Well, I tell you, you were a lot of fun today. Just talking about all your things you've been through and the buildings that you built and the houses that you do and how you handle your clients and where you came from and yeah, Sebastian Eilert from
Yes, thank you.
Hamburg, Florida, from Hamburg, Germany, actually, and is now looking to expand his business up into the northern country of the Adirondacks.
Yes, sir.
Again, and I can help you there with some resources for sure. Again, where can people find you, Sebastian?
Again, pleasure, and I do look forward to working with you both here in Miami and in upstate New York.
Beautiful,
And if
beautiful.
people can find me, so the company is Sebastian Eilert Architecture, and the website is sebastianeilert.com. If you want to read a little bit more about like general information about building practices, you can also find a blog which is called Miami Green Home, and that also has some of the information that does link back to our website. But the website is a great way to start us. And then you have a lot of pictures under the house profile or platform where you can again look for Sebastian Eilert Architecture. You'll find us there.
Beautiful. And let's not forget the best architectural firm in 2023 and 2024. And he stands behind his work. And it's proven today on this show how well he's articulate about what he does. So thank you again, Sebastian. Thank you very much for taking the time. And I look forward to collaborating with you.
Thank you, Tom. It has been a real pleasure being on the show. And I do, if you go back, Columbia University, it eluded me.
Columbia University, yes.
So it's like
Yes.
I cannot forget that name. So
Yeah, no,
that was the other part. But yeah,
that's where a lot of the architects actually come from, Columbia
yeah.
University. So good.
So you do have that part. It's been a real pleasure, though. It was like,
All right.
it's still working. In
It's there, it's still working, comes out. Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you, Tom.